In the hall of Redemir Academy's graduation ball, magnificent chandeliers glittered, and the air was filled with the faint scent of roses. A beautiful young woman with soft brown hair and bright green eyes looked up at the handsome man before her, her hands clasped nervously in front of her chest. "Lord Ludovic Valencia," she said, her voice trembling slightly. The man, dressed in formal attire and carrying himself with elegant grace, held a glass of red wine and smiled gently. "What is it, Sarah?" he asked, his voice smooth as silk. She took a deep breath, as if struggling to steady herself, and her resolve hardened. "Could you?" She finally forced out the words, as though a boulder had at last fallen from the depths of her soul. "Break off our engagement?" The man's charming smile vanished, replaced by utter disbelief. His handsome face was filled with confusion. She had done it. A feeling of pure, untainted relief swept through her entire body, and she clenched her fists in a private gesture of triumph. She had finally said it. This was the moment. This was her first step toward a new and peaceful life. It would be a life far away from the scrutinizing eyes of the nobility. A life in a convent. She could already picture it. A sanctuary surrounded by fluttering white butterflies. A place where she could finally find peace. Just a few hours earlier, the ball had been in full swing, held in the luxurious mansion of a famous merchant. Sarah stood off to the side, watching the splendid feast like an outsider. The venue was breathtakingly beautiful, more extravagant than any ball before it, and her classmates were all excited by the delicious refreshments and the magnificent decorations. It truly was an exceedingly wonderful building, but that only made her feel even more painfully inferior. She looked down at her plain high-collared dress. How she wished she could wear a beautiful gown worthy of this place, too. But for her, that was an impossible dream. In her mind, she saw herself standing alone amid shattered glass, a symbol of her life broken into pieces. The vicious whispers of two noble young ladies cut through the cheerful bustle of the ball. "Poor Miss Sarah," one of them mocked, hiding her malicious smile behind a fan. The other chimed in as well, her voice full of venom, saying Sarah could only wear stand-up collars, or else she would not be able to hide those disgusting scars. Sarah instinctively touched her neck. The girls burst into cruel laughter, as if her very existence were a disgrace. How shameless, they giggled. Sarah narrowed her eyes. They really had to be detestable right until the very end. A wicked idea flashed through the eyes of the girl leading them. "Oh, I know what to do," she announced, a cold smile rising to her lips. "Let's decorate a little. Add some new color to that plain, dowdy dress of yours." With an exaggerated flick of her hand, she tipped her glass, and dark wine immediately splashed out, spilling all over Sarah's chest and face. Her bullies roared with laughter. "It really suits you," they shrieked. "A perfect match." Sarah looked down as the dark, wet stains spread across her dress. Just what I needed, she thought with icy sarcasm. "Now my dress is dirty." Her expression turned as cold as frost. She had no choice but to leave. She turned away from those laughing at her and headed for a quiet balcony surrounded by roses, seeking refuge. The shadows of the past clung to her every step. Because of the scars left by a terrible accident in childhood, everyone treated her like a monster, even her wretched family. She was nothing more than an object sold as collateral to repay her family's debts. She could almost still hear her father's disgusted voice and his words. "Why are you looking at me with those eyes? It's your own fault you became a monster." He had explained that although her fiancé was a commoner, he had agreed to shoulder the enormous debts of Baron Moradelli's family. For a daughter of a noble house, that was a humiliation worse than death. Perhaps her stepmother had once looked at her with a terrifying, delighted smile. "You might be happier if you died before the wedding," she had hissed softly. But Sarah felt differently. Marrying a commoner was humiliating, but if he were a man who could see the real her and accept her scars along with her, she would not have minded. Yet the cruel reality was that her so-called fiancé had not come to see her even once in the past 6 years. He must simply want a connection to the nobility. The naked truth sank into her heart. In the end, no one would ever love her, and that was precisely why her resolve was unshakable. She would abandon this marriage, abandon her family, and live quietly in a convent. The days would be simple, filled with cleaning and field work, but she knew she could find happiness there. Her negotiations with the church had gone smoothly, and she could hardly wait to begin her new life as a nun, finally free. Lost in fantasies of a peaceful future, she stepped forward and nearly collided with a tall, imposing figure. She stopped just in time, her heels clicking sharply against the stone floor. She looked up, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing before her was a man so stunningly handsome it startled her, with jet black hair and sharp sapphire blue eyes. His presence was powerful and irresistibly compelling. Who is he? She thought, her heart skipping a beat. This man was a stranger, but his face was like a meticulously carved work of art. He must be one of the graduates, too, yet she could not understand how she had never seen him before. A man this handsome was impossible to forget. His intense gaze fell straight on her, making her cheeks grow hot. He probably has some business with me, she concluded, trying to calm her racing heart. Judging by the impeccably tailored suit he wore, he was undoubtedly a high-ranking noble. According to etiquette, she ought to greet him. She gathered herself and curtsied gracefully. "It is a pleasure to meet you," she said softly. "I'm Sarah Moradelli." Looking at her disheveled appearance, his gaze softened, his eyes lingering on the wine stains. He reached out and gently brushed aside a lock of her hair, and his touch sent a shiver down her spine. "You really are a poor liar, aren't you?" he said quietly, his low voice almost caressing. "Even your cheeks and hair are stained with wine. Are you trying to cover up your classmates' foolish behavior?" Her mind went blank. "Oh no," he noticed. She cried out in panic and sighed, as though she had turned into a tiny, adorable cartoon version of herself, and hurriedly tried to change the subject, taking a slight step back. "I was not trying to do anything of the sort," she stammered. "But in any case, this is my problem, so please forgive me for not saying more." He gave a low laugh, the sound both amused and warm. "Just as I thought. You haven't changed at all." Before she could ask what that inexplicable remark meant, he closed the distance between them and firmly grasped her wrist. "Sarah, come with me." Startled by his action, she asked where he intended to take her. "It's all right. Just come with me," he insisted, a charming and faintly dangerous smile on his lips. He led her toward a roped-off area inside the mansion. Hesitantly, she pointed out that it was forbidden to enter. He only smiled, his confidence completely unshaken. "It's fine. I am the owner of this mansion, so I do not need permission." Sarah's green eyes widened in shock. The owner of this luxurious mansion. Such wealth surpassed even that of the richest nobles. Why had she never seen him before? "Come, Sarah," he urged, holding out his hand to her with a smile so captivating she could not look away. He gently took her hand and led her through a grand door into a private, lavishly decorated room. In such an elegant space, the wine stains on her dress looked even more glaring. She looked around blankly. "What am I supposed to do here?" she thought. He stood very close, lowering his voice into an intimate whisper. "Please take off your clothes." Her brain short-circuited for an instant, but he immediately explained, gesturing to a breathtaking blue gown on a dress form nearby. "Please change into this dress. It was prepared for you." Her heart, which had been pounding wildly in panic, shifted into a flustered rhythm. "That startled me. I thought he was a bad man." She shook her head, trying to refuse his kindness. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness, but I have no reason to accept such charity. Besides, because of my scars, I cannot wear that sort of design." He leaned closer, his presence so overwhelming that she could barely think. He gently pressed a finger to her lips, stopping her protest. "This is something I wish to do for my own selfish reasons," he said softly, his blue eyes gazing deeply into hers. "All you need to do is accept it." She blinked and realized he was right. For the owner of this magnificent mansion, being seen standing beside someone dressed in such a miserable state would indeed be troublesome. Moreover, the cold wine was beginning to make her back ache, aggravating her old wounds. If this continued, her scars might begin to hurt again. Yes, and there would be no way to repay him afterward anyway. For now, just accept it and change into this dress, all right? She finally yielded. "I will accept your kindness." "Good," he replied with a satisfied smile. "Then we." But the instant she agreed, a searing pain shot through her back. "Ah!" she cried out and staggered to her knees, her body trembling from the sudden pain. In the next moment, he was kneeling beside her, his handsome face twisted with concern. "Sarah!" His voice was sharp with panic. "Did someone hurt you?" A flash of killing intent abruptly crossed his eyes, and his expression turned terrifyingly cold. "Was it those women?" No, she gasped and hurriedly shook her head, trying to dispel his dangerous assumption. It is only that once my body temperature dropped a little, my old wound started to hurt. He stared at her, and his anger slowly receded, replaced by an unreadable expression. Those wounds. May I see them? He asked, his voice softening. It happened when I was a child. It no longer matters. His gaze was intense and unwavering. I want to see every part of you. Her breath caught. Was he doing this out of genuine concern? But I cannot show you. She instinctively hugged her arms around herself and avoided his piercing gaze, her refusal hanging silently between them. Her voice was very soft, and the low murmur carried pain that had sunk deep into her bones, her emerald eyes reflecting a past full of rejection. That was why they always broke off the engagements. Every man who saw her scars would turn away in disgust and leave her in the dust. In the end, even her wealthy family had merely sold her off like livestock, forcing her into an engagement with a man whose face she had never even seen. But before she could sink any deeper into bitter memories, a firm hand suddenly seized her wrist with astonishing force. In an instant, Ludovic had cornered her. His statue-like, upright body pressed her against a wall of blooming roses, the thorns forming a sharp contrast to the sudden intimacy. Sarah! His voice was a low murmur that sent a tremor down her spine. His sharp blue eyes held her captive, ordering her not to move. Her heart hammered violently in her chest, because she felt his fingers settle at the nape of her neck, right where the zipper of her dress was. What was he doing? A tiny, frightened gasp escaped her lips as his fingers began skillfully pulling the zipper down. Her mind was in chaos. Was he going to undress her here right now? Why? Had he not heard any of the miserable story she had just poured out? Oh, of course he would hurt her. He was so close she could almost feel his breath against her lips, and his voice became a dangerous whisper, both a caress and a threat. Had she not shown her skin, her wounds, to other men as well? A chilling darkness poured into his eyes, the flame of possessiveness igniting there and turning all the blood in her body cold. That was something he could never forgive. She was his. She tried to protest, tried to deny it, but his arm wrapped around her waist like steel and pulled her tightly against him. He warned her not to move, his tone carrying a silky threat. If she moved too much, he would not be able to be gentle. At that moment, she sat there, fragile and helpless, looking up at him with wide, terrified eyes. He loomed over her, the very embodiment of a handsome predator, and his voice sank even lower. Or did she want him to force her? The unspoken promise of violence hung in the air, and extreme fear seized her. What was happening? Why was he doing this? She was terrified. Then, just as her fear reached its peak, a ghostly smile appeared on his lips, a chilling and satisfied smirk. "Good girl," he said softly. The rest of her dress slipped down, exposing the delicate skin of her back to the cool air. The scars were there, pale silver marks marring her once flawless skin, telling of a past she desperately wanted to forget. Ludovic's expression darkened, his gaze fixed firmly on those marks. "These are from that time." It was not a question, but a statement filled with cold fury. Before she could react, he bent forward, his black hair brushing her skin, and placed a gentle kiss on the largest scar on her shoulder. She gasped in shock. He drew back slightly, his eyes searching hers with unexpected tenderness. "Does it hurt?" he asked softly. She could only stammer that it did not, her cheeks burning and her mind blank. Hearing that answer, he seemed relieved. Then he did something utterly unimaginable. He licked the scar, the tip of his tongue tracing the raised skin, and she was struck by pure shock from head to toe. A pitiful, breathy moan escaped her mouth, a sound even she did not recognize. He held her tighter, a low laugh rolling from his chest as he whispered by her ear. It seemed her back was sensitive, wasn't it? He teased her in an alluring, playful voice, sounding quite amazed. He had only licked her a little, and she had made such a lovely, passionate sound. "Sarah." Her name became a reverent whisper on his lips. "Every part of you," he murmured, "is so adorable." He adorned his words with more kisses, trailing them from the side of her neck down to her shoulder. She was powerless to stop the ragged breaths spilling from her lips. He pressed her against the pillar, his body close to hers, lost in the moment, until a mischievous voice cut through the heated air. "Oh dear, how terrible. Master is sexually harassing someone." The spell-like atmosphere shattered. Ludovic raised his head, his expression a mixture of annoyance and impatience. His maids were simply looking at him, one appearing deeply entertained, while the other wore a serious expression and even commented that their master was far too impatient. "I know," he admitted, a sigh slipping from his lips. Even he was surprised that he had lost control so completely in front of her. Sarah, mortified with shame, curled in on herself and hid behind a nearby curtain. Ludovic merely introduced the two women to her, saying they were his maids and assuring her she could rely on them. The cat-eared maid bounced forward cheerfully, introduced herself as Lulu, and called her Little Sarah, which surprised Sarah greatly. Lulu declared that it was a very cute way to address her and promised to take good care of her. Then the more serious maid, Emma, introduced herself as well. After one last look at Sarah, Ludovic entrusted her to the reliable care of the two maids and left the room. Lulu immediately sprang into action, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "First things first," she announced, "they were going to make those scars disappear." Make them disappear? The idea was astounding. At their very first proper meeting, he had arranged a high-level magician for her. Why was he being so kind to her? Emma interrupted her thoughts, reminding them that the ball would soon be over and that they had to hurry. Lulu cheerfully replied, "All right," and then released her magic. A whirlwind of pink and blue light wrapped around Sarah, shimmering and swirling around her. When the light faded, she looked into the mirror and could hardly believe her eyes. Was that really her? The woman gazing back from the mirror wore a stunning dress that fit her figure perfectly. Hesitantly, she raised a hand and touched her bare shoulder. Her scars had all completely vanished. It was nothing short of a miracle. Just then, the door creaked open, and Ludovic appeared in the doorway. "Sarah," he began, a warm smile on his lips. But his words caught in his throat, and his sapphire eyes widened with pure, undisguised wonder. "Ah!" She looked at him shyly, her cheeks flushed, feeling beautiful for the first time in her life. He was utterly speechless. This far exceeded anything he had imagined. In a few strides, he crossed the room and gently cupped her cheek, his touch sending sparks across her skin. "You are beautiful," he murmured, his voice full of emotion. No words could ever be enough. Her blush deepened, because the vivid memory of what he had done to her earlier flashed through her mind. Having him so close again made her heart feel as though it would leap out of her chest. He noticed her averted gaze and leaned closer, a playful smile appearing on his handsome face. "You should stop looking away and look straight at me instead." Was she feeling shy? Her bashful reaction was simply too adorable. Too adorable. He found himself wanting to devour her right then and there. His face gradually drew closer, his intention all too obvious, and her eyelashes lowered in anticipation. She was going to be kissed. "Master!" Emma's sharp voice cut in once again. "You must return to the venue before the ball ends." Ludovic froze and pulled back with a comically frustrated expression. "All right." He turned to Sarah, and his expression immediately softened. He held out his hand to her. "Please allow me to escort you." A wave of fear rose in her heart. She did not want to go back there, did not want to face her classmates' contempt and mockery. But after everything he had done for her, she simply could not refuse. She swallowed her fear and placed her hand in his palm. "Thank you." When they stepped into the grand ballroom, the crowd immediately fell silent. Everyone turned their heads, eyes wide with shock and confusion. Whispers spread among the noble young ladies like wildfire. Who was that unbelievably handsome man? And that person, surely it could not be Sarah Moradelli? When they recognized the expensive designer dress she wore, and, more importantly, discovered that her rumored scars had completely vanished, the gasps grew louder. Suddenly, the crowd parted to make way for a newcomer, and the whispers turned into excited shrieks. It was him. Prince Stan, as handsome and dashing as ever, walked straight toward them. "Hey, Ludo," he greeted with a familiar smile. "Hey, Stan," Ludovic replied coolly. The onlookers were stunned. This mysterious man was actually a close friend of the prince. The prince patted him on the shoulder and turned to everyone. "Allow me to introduce my friend. This is Ludovic Valencia." The name echoed through the silent hall. Sarah's heart jolted violently. Ludovic Valencia. He was an extremely important person. The name felt strangely familiar to her, stirring a dark, forgotten memory. Her eyes widened in terror as all the fragments came together in her mind. Where had she heard that name before? The blond man, Stan, pointed toward a shockingly handsome figure holding a glass of wine, his dark, sharply tailored suit making him the undeniable center of attention in the glittering ballroom. That was Ludovic, the man Stan had met while studying abroad, a genius who had once brought about countless successful deals, enough to benefit an entire nation. Stan explained that he had learned a great deal from him. Ludovic was an upper-class citizen at the academy, and he seemed to be moving swiftly toward obtaining a noble title. He was a man with limitless prospects. The ladies around them could hardly contain their excitement. Their cheeks flushed as they swooned over his godlike appearance. He was far too handsome. Stan, always skilled at socializing, thought this was the perfect chance to introduce them. He called out to his friend, wanting to become better acquainted with him, and casually mentioned that he wanted to introduce his fiancée. Stan asked if that would be all right. Ludovic turned around, a meaningful faint smile appearing on his lips, but it was Stan whose face turned pale, as if to say, "Wait, fiancé?" An angry stir spread among the whispering ladies as their fantasies shattered in an instant. What? Who? Who was that man's fiancé? Across the room, Sarah was innocently admiring the dessert table when she suddenly sneezed. Fiancé? She wondered, a strange premonition quietly creeping into her heart. Suddenly, a pair of polished leather shoes stopped in front of her. Before she could even lift her head, a strong hand wrapped around her waist and pulled her close against a hard, masculine chest. The man was the beautiful devil everyone had been talking about. He lowered his head and smiled at her, then announced to the shocked crowd that, now that he had graduated today, he would marry her. The entire room erupted in disbelieving gasps. Sarah's mind went blank, her green eyes filled with confusion. Me? Ludovic's voice was as smooth as silk as he gazed at her and solemnly declared, "I understand." Then he said to everyone present, "This person is my fiancé." So he was that man, the man she had been engaged to. At last, she understood. Because she had known nothing but his name, she had never realized it. Her hand instinctively tightened around the fabric of the beautiful blue dress she wore, and now she understood that it had been a gift from him. So that was it. That was why he had prepared the magician in this dress. It had been so she would change into it. Part of her was grateful, but that gratitude was quickly choked off by the bitter memories that surged up inside her. For 6 whole years, he had ignored her, locked her away, and imprisoned her like a butterfly trapped in a crystal cage. And now he had suddenly appeared and was treating her like this, as though she were some toy he had bought with money. His shamelessness was astonishing, and anger blazed in her chest. If he had merely been some nameless man seeking convenience, perhaps it would have been better. But she could never accept being treated like a possession by this despicable, handsome man. She took a deep breath, forced herself to calm down, and broke free from his arms. She addressed him formally, her voice trembling yet firm. "Lord Ludovic Valencia." He tilted his head, a trace of confusion passing through his bright blue eyes. "What is it?" he asked. She looked straight into his eyes, her own burning with desperate resolve. Could you end our engagement?" The air stretched taut with tension. Ludovic's eyes widened, pure, unconcealed shock appearing on his beautiful face. What? The wine glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the marble floor. The entire ballroom fell into a stunned, suffocating silence. His gaze flickered downward for an instant, as though a storm were gathering in his eyes. Then he softly called her name. "Sarah." He raised his head, and his expression suddenly became gentle, almost wounded. "It seems I put too much pressure on you, didn't I?" Sarah was bewildered by the sudden change in his tone. He leaned closer, his low, intimate murmur sending a shiver down her spine. If it was because of those forceful kisses earlier, he could ask for forgiveness as many times as necessary. "Please," he whispered, his eyes pleading. "Do not speak of ending our engagement, not even as a joke." He moved a little closer, as if to kiss her again, and she shrank back. What? The onlookers saw only their intimate posture and mistook the tension for an ordinary lover's quarrel. "How boring," they muttered, turning away. "But this is not a joke," she insisted. Her voice was filled with desperate irritation. Ludovic ignored her completely and smoothly turned toward the guests, offering a disarming smile. "Everyone, I apologize for causing a disturbance," he announced calmly. He wanted to make up with her, but to do that, they needed to be alone. Would it be all right if they left the banquet now? He gripped her arm with a force like steel. "Hey," she protested, but it was already too late. He calmly handed a note to Stan, and Stan gave him a cheerful, knowing smile. No problem at all, Stan said. Take as long as you like. Thanks, Stan, Ludovic replied, already pulling the struggling Sarah toward the exit. He dragged her out of the ballroom without a moment's hesitation. Come, Sarah, he ordered. She pleaded with him, but her words vanished into the grand corridor outside. Beneath the starry sky, a splendid carriage was waiting for them. Lord Valencia, I am not joking. She dug her heels firmly into the floor. I truly want to end our engagement. Yet he kept smiling in that infuriating way, as though she were speaking another language. Are you listening to me? Sarah. Inside the soft, luxurious carriage, he finally released her, and his voice softened. Calm down. She glared at him, her chest heaving violently with anger. He calmly explained that saying such a thing in public would damage both their reputations unless they disguised it as a joke. She collapsed back into the seat, defeated. About that, I apologize. But her anger soon surged up again. I only did that because you ignored my feelings and announced the wedding in front of everyone. He reached out to take her hand, and his touch made her whole body jolt involuntarily. Was it really necessary for me to confirm it with you beforehand? I believe that I now possess everything you would expect in a marriage partner. She pulled her hand back as if she had been burned. That is not the problem. I have been engaged to you for 6 years. Her voice choked with years of accumulated hurt and loneliness. But you never came to see me even once. Do you understand that? And besides that, there was the forcefulness just now. The memories surged up uncontrollably, those unwanted kisses wrapping around her like thorn vines. I cannot imagine marrying someone so unfaithful. His expression changed again, becoming unbelievably gentle. Sarah, I apologize for being too busy during that time and failing to visit you. He lightly kissed her knuckles, his eyes locking onto hers with overwhelming intensity. Even so, I want you to believe that you are more important to me than anyone else. For an instant, she was seized by the sincerity in his eyes and could barely breathe. But she quickly came back to herself and yanked her hand away. I cannot believe people who say one thing and do another. The warmth in his eyes vanished instantly, replaced by a piercing frost. What a pity that my sincerity failed to reach you. However, he said, his voice sinking to a dangerous low, I will not accept ending the engagement. He leaned over her, trapping her against the seat, his presence suffocating. I handled the debts of Baron Moradelli's family. His eyes pinned her in place like shards of ice. So if you want to make any claim for divorce, you should first repay me the money, should you not? Her world seemed to tilt. I don't understand. You have fame, power, and wealth. You could clearly choose someone far better as a marriage partner, couldn't you? Then why did you take on all my family's debts? He leaned closer, his lips brushing past her ear as he whispered. The reason? Do you want to know why? Because you are just that captivating. Her heart skipped a beat. Someone as scarred as me is captivating? Her scar-covered back rose in her mind. Impossible. Even if what you are saying truly is what you think. She met his gaze, a new fire igniting in her eyes. Would you mind telling me in detail why you think so? When did you first meet me? Please explain it to me. The first time? He seemed somewhat hesitant. He closed his eyes, and a nostalgic smile passed over his lips. I saw you a long time ago, and I was drawn to you at first sight. Love at first sight. The answer was so absurd and so flimsy that she almost wanted to laugh. This man, no, perhaps it would be more accurate to say this was the whim of a wealthy person. That makes it even harder for me to trust you, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Won't you reconsider? I plan to work while repaying the money. He frowned. You're going to work? Yes, she confirmed. I plan to do a lot of physical labor. That way, after a few years, I will be able to pay off the debt. So what do you think? Are you willing to end our engagement? A dangerous light appeared in his eyes. He reached out and gently lifted her chin, making her face him. Raise your head. I understand how you feel, he said, his voice deceptively soft. Hope flared in her chest. Then his gentle expression twisted into a cruel sneer. You are that unwilling to marry me. So unwilling that you would even go that far, aren't you? Before she could understand his words, he roughly pushed his thumb into her mouth, blocking her protest. Her eyes widened with shock and the feeling of violation. Even so, he growled, his voice low and muffled. No matter how you beg, I will not accept ending the engagement. This marriage is almost like a contract. As long as you cannot repay all the debt to me, you have no other choice but to become my wife. These lips and this tongue that only speak cold words to me are all my share. He leaned closer, his lips tracing along her ear. No, she cried, trying to push him away. I will not let you go, she gasped, her strength gradually draining away. If you're going to throw a tantrum like this and argue with me, then even if I have to force you, I will take you to my castle. I will slowly teach your body that you belong only to me. He crushed her lips with a rough, possessive kiss, stealing the air from her lungs. Helpless, furious tears streamed down her face as he completely overpowered her. At last, breaking down, she beat her fists against his chest. I understand. I will register the marriage with you, and I will move into the castle. So move away. A victorious and terrifying smile bloomed on his face. Is that so? That is wonderful. I am relieved that you understand. Her heart screamed with fear. His smile was too frightening. Then, he continued smoothly, we will go greet your parents at once, then head to the castle. Now, she stammered. Is there a problem? He asked, his smile not wavering in the slightest. I still have many things to prepare. Besides that, I also want to go speak with my friend. His eyes narrowed dangerously. Your friend? Do you mean that young seer, Hugo? Sarah froze, an icy fear sweeping through her whole body. Huh? He is the eldest son of a family that once worked for mine. A gentle memory surfaced of Hugo placing a flower crown on her head. To her, he had always been like a kind older brother. You know him? She whispered. I know everyone who associates with you. His tone allowed no argument. The terrifying truth struck her all at once. He has been watching me to make sure his fiancée, and I do not do anything improper. Although he did not personally imprison me, did he send people to watch me? He considered her request. That will be a little difficult. How about tomorrow? Sarahas to jihasht spoon rapidly. Since I've been watched all this time, it would be best for us to live together as soon as possible, so tomorrow it is. He made the decision for her. All right, she agreed in defeat. Genuine joy lit up his face. Sarah, I am glad. He took both her hands in his eyes shining. We can finally be together. The sudden affection he showed made her uncomfortable, and she pulled her hands back. Stop that. I will leave before I get used to it. His smile stiffened. Huh? She looked straight into his eyes, defiance echoing in her voice. Once I repay the debt, you'll accept a divorce, won't you? Because by then, I will have no reason to continue being your wife. Her decision settled heavily in her heart like a cold, hard stone. She had to find a job, and fast. She could not stay here. But when her hand slipped from his, a sudden panic seized him. Sarah turned her back, the graceful line of her shoulders like a wall he could never break through. The night wind was cool as she walked toward the waiting carriage, each step taking her farther from him. Then please excuse me, she said, her voice empty of the warmth he treasured. Wait, Sarah. His voice cracked with desperation as he reached for her, but his fingertips grasped only empty air. She was already gone, slipping away quietly like a dream at dawn, leaving only the scent of roses in the wind. He stood frozen in place, watching the carriage disappear into the darkness, with only a hollow where his heart had been. His beautiful features twisted with confusion and pain. This was strange. Why had she ended up hating him so much? Whenever it concerned her, it was always like this. He never knew how to handle it properly. Now, after so long, when he had finally seen her again, he had ruined everything. His thoughts spiraled back into the darkness of the past, a past as cold and miserable as the rain-soaked streets of Morojin. He was the son of a prostitute, abandoned when he was young and left to fend for himself. He had always lived in the gnawing fear of hunger, a lonely orphan curled up in filth. His world was cold, damp, and starving, and his only comfort was a piece of bread clutched in his trembling hands. Then a shadow fell over him. A man wearing a mysterious eye patch and a kind smile appeared, handing him a fresh loaf of bread. He was the casino manager, and in that moment, he was Louis's savior. The manager took notice of the boy's handsome face, expecting that he might prove useful. So he took him in, gave him odd jobs, and taught him the rules of the world. He went from a street rat to a capable young man. Years later, he took on the role of a dealer, and his life finally found some semblance of peace. Yet amid the clatter of chips and the murmurs of the crowd, a deep loneliness began to grow in his heart, and his days seemed hollow and gray. It was during one such quiet moment, when he was sharing a piece of bread with a stray cat, that his world changed forever. That was when he met Sarah. Her father, Baron Moradelli, a man with greed gleaming in his eyes, came to the casino with his radiant daughter. The manager warmly greeted the Baron and noticed the lovely young lady beside him. The Baron laughed, a disgusting, boastful sound. "She is my daughter," he said, admitting that bringing her around was quite useful because curious people would buy him wine and food. Lewis's face tightened with contempt. This vile man was parading his own daughter around like a prize pony, treating her as a commodity on display. What a worthless person. Then the Baron pushed Sarah forward and made her greet his acquaintances. "It is a pleasure to meet you all," he announced theatrically. "I'm Sarah Moradelli." A man with a lecherous gaze asked the young lady what she thought of the night district. With a bright smile, she answered that it was quite interesting. The man continued pressing her, asking whether she liked the casino too. Her answer struck Lewis deep in his heart. She said lightly, her eyes shining with innocent light, "As long as I'm out with father, I'm happy no matter where we go." Lewis was too stunned to speak. In the midst of this vortex filled with desire and selfishness, such a pure being had appeared, like an angel in a den of demons. From that moment on, he could no longer take his eyes off her. One night, after Sarah and her father had become regulars, Lewis was beaten by a customer who had lost too many times. He was leaning over the sink in the washroom when a soft voice called out to him. He turned around sharply, his breath catching in his throat. It was Sarah. She was holding a pure, white handkerchief, worry on her beautiful face. He was so shocked he could not move. She just called his name. She pointed at his bruised cheek, her voice gentle. "You are bleeding here. Take this." She offered him the handkerchief with a sweet smile. Lewis's mind went blank. Was this a dream? This unattainable, radiant girl was actually speaking to him, worrying about him. The throbbing pain in his cheek vanished completely. He stammered that he could not possibly use something so fine. She only smiled, then declared, "I will wipe it for you." Before he could protest, her small, soft hand gently wiped the blood from his skin. He felt a blush creep up his neck. "See, now it is clean." All he could manage was a hoarse thank you. "You are welcome." She smiled brightly, then confessed, "I have always wanted to talk to you." He stared at her in complete confusion. "The way you run the games and announce the results is truly amazing," she said excitedly, admiration sparkling in her shining eyes. She reached out and took his hand, and her touch sent an electric tremor through his entire body. "If it is not too much trouble," she asked, "would you be willing to be my friend?" His heart pounded wildly in his chest. He felt as though he were floating. From that day on, their friendship bloomed in secret. They met whenever they had the chance, talked about silly things, and played with the cats. And every time they met, he fell more deeply in love with her. But he knew his place in the world. He was a dealer born from the gutter, while she was a noble young lady. He had no intention of confessing. Being her friend was already a happiness he had never dared to hope for. However, 3 months after they met, that fragile happiness was shattered. The Baron had lost again, and he slammed his fist down on the table in rage. "Damn it, all the money I brought is gone." He cursed. As the dealer, Lewis asked him whether he would stop there. "No, it is not over yet," the Baron growled, the desperate madness of a gambler in his eyes. "Can I wager my daughter's body for another round?" The color instantly drained from Sarah's face. Her own father was offering her up as if she were a piece of property. "If you win," he said to his opponent, "you can spend the whole night with her and do whatever you like. Doesn't that count as a deal?" A greedy, lecherous smile split the opponent's face. "With your daughter? Are you serious?" "As long as you don't break her, of course." "Father," Sarah said softly, her voice trembling. The man lunged forward, seized her arm, and shouted triumphantly, "Miss, I'll make you feel good, so just wait." She was surrounded by shadowy figures, her eyes wide with pure terror. Ludovic's blood ran cold. He gritted his teeth, his voice as cold as steel. "Hey, you don't get to touch her yet. That comes after you win." The man let go of her, but Sarah was still trapped, like a beautiful butterfly caught in a spider's web, staring at the predators around her. A cold fury unlike anything Ludovic had ever felt swept through him. Damn it! He glared at the men, hatred burning in his eyes. "I will never let him lay a finger on her. Even if I have to stake my life on it, I will protect her." He forced down the urge to kill them all on the spot. and instead made use of his position as dealer. With a flick of his wrist too fast for the naked eye to follow, he secretly manipulated the game and dealt her father a winning hand. Ah! This is the greatest victory of all time. The Baron noticed nothing and burst out laughing. Ludovic's hands were shaking. He knew that if they discovered he had cheated, they would kill him without hesitation. But when he caught a glimpse of the relief on her face, he knew that even if he had to do it all over again, he would not hesitate. Wonderful. The Baron gathered up his winnings. He knew nothing. Ludovic exhaled a breath he had not realized he had been holding. However, the casino manager's sharp single, I had seen everything. He did it, didn't he? A vicious kick sent Ludovic flying into the wall. He was dragged out back and thrown into a filthy alley, the stench of garbage flooding his nose. How dare you try such a clumsy trick? The casino manager's cold voice cut through the darkness. This was his punishment. The casino manager had seen through him. Hey, you like the Moradelli girl, don't you? You did this to protect her. The casino manager grabbed Ludovic by the hair, forcing his head up in pain. You really are naive. Remember, I'm the one who bought you. Understand. He released him, his tone softening slightly. Because of that, I'll turn a blind eye to what happened today. But if you cause trouble again, he crushed out his cigarette beneath his heel. Then I suggest you prepare yourself. Killing one brat is nothing. He leaned close and blew smoke directly into Ludovic's face. Ludovic coughed, his lungs burning. You do have some nerve, though. The casino manager sneered. A girl like you will never win the heart of a noble young lady. You could go home today. Cool your head. The casino manager turned and left, leaving him battered and humiliated. He thought he was lucky that it had ended without him being killed. Suddenly, the clang of metal striking metal echoed through the alley. Who's there? He snapped, whipping his head around. At the end of the alley, illuminated by moonlight, stood Sarah. Her eyes were wide with shock, one hand covering her mouth. Why was she here? Beneath the vast starry sky, when he saw her standing there, her pink figure framed against the cold stone wall, a young servant's world tilted completely. Sarah, his voice was only a stunned whisper. Why was she here? Her bright green eyes, always so gentle, were now filled with an intensity bordering on despair. I didn't know. Is it true? Were the things the casino manager had said true? Had he really deceived her pathetic father and deliberately lost the game to protect her? And was that why he was now in so much trouble? His heart stopped dead in his chest. Cold sweat broke out over his skin, and his eyes widened in absolute panic. She had heard everything. Of all the people in the world, why did it have to be her? He immediately tried to deny it, waving his arms in a panic as if his pitiful gestures could brush her words away. It's not like that. He had no idea what she was talking about. But Sarah saw through the flimsy lie at once. You're lying, she insisted, her voice trembling slightly. Isn't that what the casino manager was shouting about just now? He had nowhere to run. Heat crept up his neck as the secret he had guarded so carefully was completely exposed. Seeing him in such pain, Sarah's expression softened. She reached out and gently cupped his burning cheek. That's why I came, she whispered, to apologize. The moment she touched him, his world shattered. Shame swept over him, hot and suffocating. He was ashamed that his lowly, hopeless feelings for someone far above his station had been discovered. He could not look at her, nor could he bear the pity in her eyes. I told you. I don't know what you're talking about, he choked out. Then, in pure instinctive panic, he pushed her away. The instant he realized what he had done, his mind went blank with fear. He had pushed her away on instinct, his only thought to flee from the humiliation. Her hand slipped from his, and she stumbled backward into the darkness, falling silently and gracefully toward disaster. She landed in the worst possible place, a pile of countless glittering shards of glass. They were fragments of discarded wine bottles. He could only stand frozen and watch as her delicate pink dress was instantly stained by spreading crimson. Sarah, her name tore from his throat as a howl of pain and regret. He crawled to her side and knelt amid the filth and broken glass. I'm sorry, he sobbed, lifting her head in trembling hands. What should I do? His mind roared with terror. Then he saw the horrifying, deep wounds across her back, blood pooling on the cold stone ground. He had to get help. He had to call someone at once. But just as he was about to rise, her small hand suddenly reached out and seized his wrist with astonishing strength. No, she pleaded, her voice weak but firm. Don't call anyone. If her father found out, the casino manager would surely kill him. Even now, bleeding and wounded because of him, she was still worried about his safety. The thought shattered shattered everything left inside him. Tears streamed down his face, and his body shook with his sorrow so deep he could not breathe. He was completely at a loss. Suddenly, her father's drunken bellow echoed through the alley. "Sarah, where are you?" he shouted happily, clutching the bag of money he had won from the rigged game. Both of them froze in fear. "It's my father," she whispered, her eyes full of urgency. "You have to run." He urged her to do the same, but she shook her head, pain flickering across her face. "I'm fine, so hurry and go," she insisted, pushing at his chest. She even forced a weak, heartbreaking smile and told him that if they could meet again someday, she wanted him to speak to her the way he always had. The thought struck him like a heavy blow. If he was killed, he would never see her again, and he did not like that thought at all. So, in a moment of utter cowardice, he took advantage of her kindness. He hardened his heart and did as she said, letting go of her hand. He turned away and left, abandoning his angel to be found by her monstrous father. He hid in the shadows and watched as her father berated his foolish daughter, showing no concern for her pain and caring only that the scars would ruin her marriage prospects. The servant's legs gave out, and he collapsed to the ground, drowning in a sea of self-loathing. Time passed, but the guilt only festered. After returning to the casino, he heard her father say sickening things, that he could no longer drag around a scar monster, and that if he could not marry her off, he would sell her to a brothel. Another nobleman laughed and made a filthy joke about training her into a popular prostitute. A cold, murderous intent ignited in the servant's eyes, like a chilling blue flame. A vow formed deep in his soul. Sarah, his angel, had risked her life for an orphan like him. No one saw her selfless beauty. They only trampled it without hesitation. Therefore, as the one who had committed the gravest sin of hurting her, it was his duty to protect her until the very end. Yes, he would do anything, absolutely anything, to make her his. He would protect her in a world that belonged to him, binding this fallen angel in chains and keeping her safe and far away from everyone. He would give her eternal peace so that she would never be hurt again. His resolve hardened into ice. For that, he needed power, money, and a status high enough to trample those vile nobles beneath his feet. His transformation began. He built an intelligence network, earned an immense fortune through business, and used magic to buy his way into high society. He sent lavish betrothal gifts to her family, a treasury they could not refuse. He changed his hair, his eyes, and even his name, burying that pathetic servant boy and his sin deep in the past. And today, he had finally been reborn as Ludovic Valencia and met her again. But he was still the person who had hurt her. And now, she hated him. He had to erase the thought of leaving him from her mind, because he had no intention of ever letting her go again, even if she begged him to release her. He would never agree. The next day, he came to the Moradelli manor, his posture straight and imposing. Sarah could only watch as her parents changed from their former disdain to groveling servility, prostrating themselves before this man who was not only a business magnate, but soon to become a count. The marriage contract was officially settled, sealing her fate. But another pair of eyes watched everything with vicious jealousy. Her younger sister Sylvia trembled with rage. "Poor sister," she sneered, her words dripping with false pity. "You have to marry a commoner, while I'm engaged to a count's son." Then she twisted Sarah's own kindness into a weapon, reminding her that she herself had been raised like a princess precisely so she would not end up as a scar monster like Sarah. "I'm definitely going to be happier than you," she giggled cheerfully, yet her face twisted into a mask of anger. That commoner actually had a brighter future than her own fiancé, and he was infuriatingly handsome too. Her marriage would be inferior to that of her scarred older sister. Unacceptable. She would never allow such a thing. Ludovic caught that malicious gaze, and his own expression turned to ice. Later, when they were preparing to leave, Sarah stood stiffly beside her new husband. None of this felt real. She had truly married this man. He gave her a small, gentle smile and softly called her name as he held out his hand to her. But she avoided him as if she had been burned, turned her back, and hurried toward the waiting carriage, ignoring his call. "Sarah," he called again, his voice already dropping to a dangerous low. Just as she was almost at the carriage door, a warm, familiar voice stopped her. Hugo. It was her childhood friend. His smile was a reassuring sight. He had seen in his divination cards that she was about to leave, so he had come to see her. But that smile soon faded. "Sarah, I'm sorry," he said, his voice full of guilt. He knew she had been sold into this marriage, and he had been unable to stop it. She immediately told him it was not his fault, but his words trailed off as dark memories of that night flashed through his mind. At that moment, Ludovic appeared behind them. The two men introduced themselves, and palpable tension crackled in the air. Ludovic's smile was as sharp as a blade. "You're a childhood friend?" Hugo proudly declared that he had always been the one closest to her. "The one who protected her. The one closest to her, are you?" Ludovic's voice was icy. "Then why didn't you stop this marriage she was sold into?" His words were a direct attack, accusing Hugo of standing by and doing nothing, while she suffered. An image of Sarah bound in chains, helpless and alone, flashed between them, symbolizing Hugo's failure. Sarah looked on, her heart pounding under the suffocating pressure emanating from both men. "And yet someone so incompetent dares to call himself my wife's friend." Ludovic's voice was a low growl. "I cannot overlook that." Hugo finally exploded. "What do you think you know?" he roared, grabbing Ludovic by his refined collar. "You're nothing but a man who uses money to get what he wants." Sarah cried out in shock as her past and present collided in a disastrous explosion. The tension stung like electricity, and Hugo's desperate, hoarse voice tore through the air. He clutched the expensive fabric of Ludovic's coat, his knuckles white from the force. He tried to explain that when it came to Sarah, he had always, but the words stuck in his throat. He begged Ludovic to calm down and not make the situation any worse. Sarah watched the confrontation on the verge of erupting, clutching a small card tightly in her hand as her heart pounded in her chest. She remembered the warning she had received, that this man called Lord Valencia was destined to become a powerful count. Her large emerald eyes were filled with desperate concern for her friend Hugo. She pleaded softly, like a fragile breath in the tense air. But just as suddenly as it had begun, Hugo's resolve collapsed. His hands fell, and a choked apology escaped his lips. He felt completely and hopelessly useless. He had been that way until the very end. Ludovic, meanwhile, maintained his aristocratic composure, merely looking down at him like the silent victor of this wordless war. Hugo's eyes were filled with confusion. What is she talking about? But Sarah's voice fell upon his wounded heart like a gentle consolation. She reminded him that he had always been like this, always so worried about her. So many times, it was precisely because of his deep concern that she had been saved. Hugo, her voice was a soft murmur. She told him that from now on, she would pray for his happiness. If he ever had any troubles in the future, she hoped she could help him however she could. Hugo's gratitude shone like brilliant light. Her smile was bright enough to outshine the sun, and she thanked him. However, that precious, tender moment was cruelly torn apart. A pair of sharp blue eyes flashed with cold, possessive anger. A hand reached out like a snake and clamped onto Sarah's arm like iron. Ludovic yanked her away. "Hugo," his voice was low, like an order. "Sarah, we're leaving." He cast one final disdainful glance over his shoulder. "Well then, excuse us. Goodbye, Hugo." The words were polite, but his tone was a clear and chilling declaration of ownership. Hugo could only stand in shocked silence, defeat written across his face. He reached out, grasping uselessly at the empty space where she had just stood. Sarah. Her name lingered like a ghost on his lips, but she had already been taken away. They vanished from sight, heading toward the grand and majestic Valencia mansion. When they arrived, Sarah held her breath at the imposing splendor of the residence, as if even the stone walls whispered of history and power. Her thoughts churned. He was not even a count yet. So what dark bargains had he made to possess a place like this? The magnificent gates opened, revealing a line of maids who bowed in unison and welcomed Lady Sarah. Suddenly, an energetic voice shouted, "Sarah!" It was Lulu. She rushed forward and hugged Sarah so tightly it almost crushed her bones, overjoyed to see her again. Another maid, calmer and wearing glasses, introduced herself as Emma, the chief attendant, and said Sarah could come to her with any concerns. Still wrapped in Lulu's arms, Sarah thanked them for their kindness and vowed to be worthy of it. Ludovic watched the warm scene with an unreadable expression. At last, he spoke her name, his voice gentle yet impossible to ignore. She turned around with a questioning on her lips. He calmly took control of the situation and decided that the details could be handled later. For now, he would personally escort her to her room. His words set alarm bells ringing in her heart. He was going to take her to her room himself? She couldn't let things develop that way, could she? He leaned closer, a teasing smile on his lips. What is she talking about? His voice lowered into an intimate whisper, sending a shiver down her spine. From now on, she bore the Valencia name too. So, shouldn't she start calling him Ludovic? He pressed a finger to his lips, a devilish gleam in his captivating eyes. Completely flustered, she could only stammer her agreement. Igregas Ludovic. A satisfied, victorious smile appeared on his face. Sarah, let's go. He led her into a bedroom, so luxurious, it seemed to glow with magical light. Wow! Her eyes widened in disbelief. It was as if the room from her wildest dreams had been brought to life. Luxurious furniture, delicate details, everything was perfect. He looked at her, noticed the faint blush on her cheeks, and asked what she thought. It's truly wonderful, she whispered, genuine happiness shining on her face. A soft smile appeared on his lips, clearly pleased with her reaction. She marveled at the beautiful design of the furniture. Is this your taste? She could not help asking. He answered with affection in his voice, saying everything had been prepared especially for her, because he had heard this was the style she liked. She fell silent. He said quietly that as long as she liked it, that was enough, feeling as if after disappointing her so many times, he had finally done one thing right. A deep blush spread across her cheeks. Thank you. But reality came crashing back. She was supposed to focus on her debt, not indulge in such expensive luxury. He gently interrupted her and told her to relax. He would never force her to pay for things he wanted to give her. As for the debt, she could take her time. She was utterly confused. He explained that she did not need to work. He wanted her to focus only on adjusting to her new life here. Know that. She tried to argue, thanking him for his kindness, but insisting that she had to repay him as soon as possible. But he calmly countered with impeccable logic. As long as she stayed by his side, there would be no problem. In fact, if they did not divorce, her debt would be completely wiped out, reduced to zero. Her eyes widened in shock. Such an enormous debt would simply disappear? He moved closer, his presence intoxicating, his gaze burning. There can be no other choice, he murmured, his voice brushing over her like silk. The person I want is you. As long as you stay by my side, that amount is nothing at all. The distance between them was suffocating, and his words sent a tremor through her heart. Her thoughts raced, and a cold, frightening realization gradually surfaced. So that was it. This marriage was entirely about her body. He was using the debt to hold her down so he could do whatever he wanted with her body. That was why he said she did not have to repay it. She could not read his gaze, and he stepped back. She kept insisting, saying she would go look for work tomorrow, but he rejected her at once. No, he would not allow it for the time being. She was forbidden to leave the castle. For how long? She asked, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. His gaze flickered and shifted away. On that subject, he skillfully changed the topic. Forgive me, Sarah, but he had urgent business and had to leave at once. What? The sudden turn made her dizzy. He suggested postponing their conversation for a few days. He would not be back for dinner, but he would try to return as early as possible. Then he left her with that low, seductive murmur that made her skin tingle. Wait for me in the bedroom. In the bedroom? Her face instantly burned bright red, and her ears felt as if they were about to steam. Watching her fall apart, he quietly gave a smiling, wicked grin. Ha! They were husband and wife now, were they not? Of course, they should sleep in the same bed. He leaned closer, his lips brushing past her ear, and whispered, "Tonight is what they call a married couple's first night." He revealed a charming smile enough to make anyone fall, then turned and left. I look forward to it. Sarah stood frozen in place, her mind short-circuiting in a blaze of color. Night came, and moonlight flowed into the gorgeous room. Sarah lay stiffly on the enormous bed, pretending to be asleep even though it was still early. She had her pride. She would resist this false marriage to the very end. The door handle clicked softly, and panic struck her at once. His footsteps were soundless on the carpet as he approached Sarah. He called her name softly. He was here. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. "Are you already asleep?" he asked gently. She did not move at all, keeping her breathing even. A hand settled on the mattress beside her. He bent down, that handsome face only inches from hers. She tensed her body, but all he did was place a soft, lingering kiss on her forehead. "Good night," he whispered. Sarah screamed inside. Then he lifted the covers and laid down beside her, gently wrapping an arm around her waist and drawing her into his embrace. Her eyes flew open in the dark. That was all. He was not going to do anything else. Why? A thought flashed through her mind. Could it be that he would not force an unwilling partner? His breathing beside her had already deepened. He had fallen asleep. If that was true, then she was lucky. It meant she might still have a little leverage. That said, with him holding her so close, her body pressed against his, there was no way she could sleep. She clenched the sheets, her cheeks burning. I can't sleep, and yet, defying all reason. His presence was strangely reassuring. The warmth coming from him was unbelievably comfortable, and before she knew it, she sank into a deep, peaceful sleep. Morning light spilled in through the curtains. Sarah blinked sleepily. She felt a reassuring weight over her and also clearly sensed that someone was watching her. She was still enclosed in his arms. She opened her eyes and met his gaze directly. He was awake, propping his head on one hand as he looked down at her, his gaze so intense it nearly stole her breath. "Good morning," he said softly, his voice husky. She screamed and hurriedly backed away. "What are you doing?" A lazy, smiling curve appeared at the edge of his lips. "I was only looking at your face while you slept." His fingertips gently brushed across her cheek, leaving a trail of heat on her skin. Her face flushed red, and she completely lost her composure. "It's time for breakfast," she stammered. She tried to escape. "Wait, Sarah." His hand caught her arm gently but firmly and pulled her back. The sudden movement made her nightgown slip, revealing the scarred skin of her shoulder. She froze, shame surging up inside her. "I'm sorry you had to see something so ugly." His expression softened with deep compassion. "You do not need to apologize for anything." He gently moved the fabric aside, touching her with an almost reverent tenderness. "Every part of you is breathtakingly beautiful. Look, even in the morning light, you are still." As he spoke, he bent down and kissed her lips, the kiss soft, yet so heart-stirring it left her breathless. His deep blue eyes gazed at her. "You don't have to worry so much," he said softly. "I won't do anything except kiss you." Her mind was still in chaos. "Listen, Sarah, your scars are part of you too. To me, they are beautiful, even adorable." But he added that if she truly cared about them that much, he could have Lulu erase them with magic every day. Every day. That would be too hard on Lulu. He assured her that he would cover the cost of the magic, and she did not have to worry about anything. "No, there's no need," she insisted. As long as her clothes could cover them, she did not mind. He asked her if that was so. Very well. If she ever changed her mind, she only had to tell him. He would do everything in his power for her. "Thank you for your concern," she said softly, her heart trembling with nerves. "You don't need to thank me," he said with a gentle smile. "Now, then, shall we go have breakfast?" He extended his hand with elegant poise, as though inviting her. She looked at his hand, then raised her eyes to his sincere face. She nodded shyly and placed her hand in his palm. "All right," she agreed, as their fingers intertwined in the soft glow of the magical butterflies. Everything seemed to become the beginning of something real. The days began to blur into a strange, gilded routine. In the grand castle, breakfast was always impossibly lavish, prepared with rare spices, filling the air with intoxicating aromas and tasting as wonderful as a dream. But that dream always ended the same way. After the meal, the handsome yet distant Ludovic would immediately leave for work, his figure disappearing at the end of the broad staircase. He would not return until late at night, just like the night before. It became a predictable and lonely pattern, and when he returned, he would only slip quietly beneath the covers, hold her in his arms, and fall asleep with her, giving her silent comfort in exactly the right measure. Yet that comfort was less reassuring than it was confusing. The second day was the same, and so was the third. Sarah found herself a beautiful prisoner, gazing out through the ornate windows of her gilded cage. She was still forbidden to leave the castle grounds, yet she was given far more than she needed: delicious food, exquisite clothes, and glittering jewels. It was an unsettling kind of care, so gentle it made a chill run through her. She had thought that since she had been bought with mountains of gold, she would be treated as a mere plaything, an object meant to please him. But this kindness, this almost indulgent treatment, why? It was a storm of confusion, her green eyes full of questions she did not dare ask. One sunny afternoon, as she was drinking tea in the rose garden, a cheerful voice broke the silence. "Sarah, I'm back." A girl with short, pointed, deep green hair and a bright, fang-toothed smile waved enthusiastically. It was Lulu. A genuine smile blossomed on Sarah's face as she welcomed her home. Lulu often went out on missions, but whenever she returned, she made a point of visiting Sarah, drinking tea with her while telling her about what she had seen on her travels. They sipped their tea, and Lulu's cheerful expression dimmed slightly. She noticed the melancholy wrapped around Sarah and asked whether she was still not used to this life. Sarah sighed, her gaze falling into her cup. It was not exactly that. It was just that Lord Ludovic was always so busy, while she only stayed here with nothing to do. Guilt was eating away at her. Lulu waved a hand casually and comforted her, saying Ludovic had always been a workaholic. This was just how he was. Sarah wondered whether he ever took time to rest, but Lulu scoffed and explained that even with such wealth and influence, he was not someone who knew how to enjoy leisure. Lately, he had been focusing on creating employment opportunities and was even planning a new venture. Clearly, his work held great social significance. As Sarah listened, a deep realization gradually settled in her heart. He was completely different from her detestable father. He was far more diligent than she had imagined, and far more considerate. And the fact that he never touched her in bed, was it because he was too busy, or because he was thinking of her? But if that was the case, why had he insisted so forcefully on marrying her? She could not understand his intentions at all. A cold memory surfaced. He had once accused someone of only watching while she suffered. A terrible thought bloomed in her heart. Is he pitying me because I am already broken beyond repair? The scars on her back seemed to ache with phantom pain, painfully reminding her of everything in her past. She did not know how he had found out, but if he knew, then it explained why he had healed her with magic. It also explained why he refused to go beyond simple kisses. A new determination hardened in her heart. Precisely because of that, she could not become his burden. She had to divorce him as soon as possible. Later, she found him in the study. His sharp blue eyes lifted from his book. She entered and bowed respectfully. "Please allow me to work again," she pleaded. Ludovic's expression was filled with pure surprise. Why was she so obsessed with working? He had already told her there was no need to hurry in repaying the debt. "But this violates the contract," she insisted, her gaze unwavering. She had an obligation to repay what she owed. Ludovic fell silent, his eyes searching hers, and finally he sighed. Very well, he would allow it. But there was one condition. She could not leave the castle. He would arrange work for her that could be done here. He promised to pay her fairly. A brilliant, relieved smile bloomed on her face, and she thanked him again and again. Ludovic watched her, complicated emotions surging in the depths of his eyes. A few days later, he kept his promise and entrusted her with finishing work on half-completed gowns, a task that only the most skilled artisans would be given. True happiness blossomed in her heart. The maids noticed that she looked much healthier, and she admitted that she had never felt so fulfilled. Lulu teased her, saying she was a noble who actually loved working. Sarah only asked, "Is that strange?" "Not all," Lulu declared with a grin. "It's wonderful." Sarah threw herself into her work, her hands skillfully drawing patterns, her thoughts happily occupied. One evening, a knock sounded at her door. It was Ludovic's voice, saying that he had just returned. Sarah jerked her head up, utterly shocked. At this hour? This was the first time he had ever come back so early. Panic tightened in her chest. Had something happened? Was he hurt? She rushed toward the door. He stood there, looking perfectly fine, only slightly tired. "It's rare for you to come back at this hour," she stammered. "Did something happen at work?" His gaze softened. "You, what about me?" The question made her cheeks grow hot. "Is it not allowed?" she asked timidly. A faint blush colored his own cheeks as well, and he said softly that he was happy. With one fluid movement, he pulled her into his arms, his embrace warm and solid. "Thank you," he whispered, laughter in his voice. "Isn't it only natural for a wife to worry about her husband?" He leaned closer, his lips brushing against the shell of her ear as he made a bold request. "Then give me a welcome home kiss." She sucked in a breath, completely flustered. He explained that a business negotiation had fallen through. "As my wife," he continued, his voice dropping into a hoarse whisper, "shouldn't you comfort your exhausted husband?" Before she could answer, his lips claimed hers. Her heart pounded wildly in her chest. It had been nearly a month since she came here, and in all that time, he had never gone beyond kissing. It confirmed her fear. He must only pity her. His kisses grew deeper by the day. They were so troubling and intense that they seemed to melt her from within. "No," she whimpered, trying to pull away. "We can't go any further." He looked down at her, his blue eyes dark with emotion and his cheeks flushed. "When you look at me like that, how am I supposed to stop?" He asked hoarsely. Are you in such a hurry to repay the debt? Is staying married to me really so unbearable for you? The hurt in his voice struck her like something tangible. I have been careful, taking things slowly, but now, he growled low in his throat, his hand moving to his cravat and loosening it, his gaze burning with possessive fire. Are you finally ready to become mine? The air crackled with unspoken tension. That moment stretched as though it would last forever. But just as he bent toward her again, a hurried knock shattered the magic. Ludovic's voice was tight with irritation as he said they were busy. However, the maid outside insisted that Lady Sylvia had arrived. The name struck Sarah like lightning. Sylvia? My younger sister? Why would she come? Ludovic's expression turned to ice. Very well, he sighed, the heat extinguished. Let her in. I'll go too. Sarah immediately insisted on accompanying him. He looked down at her, a knowing smile appearing at the edge of his lips. First change into something that covers your neck. Her hand flew to her throat, and when she realized he had left a dark mark there, her face instantly flushed crimson. Sorry, he said, though his tone held no apology at all. It seems I left quite a deep mark. He placed a quick, possessive kiss on the side of her neck before turning away to receive his guest. Sarah stood frozen in place, her mind in chaos. He had been planning to go all the way just now, hadn't he? A tiny, dangerous thought sparked in her heart. Could it be that he actually likes me a little? But that hope was quickly crushed. No, that was impossible. At most, she was only a distraction, a momentary amusement. Memories of chains and despair flooded her senses. Besides, she reminded herself in panic, I am working so hard in order to get divorced. She gathered her thoughts. I can't think about this now. She shook her head, making up her mind. I have to go see Sylvia. She hurried out, her heart pounding with an ominous premonition. When she reached the outside of the reception room, she heard a scene like a nightmare repeating itself. Her younger sister Sylvia was gazing at Ludovic with adoring eyes. Lord Ludovic, the moment I saw you, I fell in love with you, she said sweetly. I broke off my own engagement for your sake. A defiled older sister like her should have been cast aside from the start. Won't you take me as your wife instead? Sarah's blood ran cold. What? She whispered. Hidden out of sight, she watched in horror as Sylvia reached out to touch Ludovic's cheek. You would go that far for me? Thank you. Then came the final, soul-crushing blow. Ludovic smiled, his expression cold and unreadable. I will give it serious consideration, my dear, sweet Sylvia, he replied smoothly. Sarah's world shattered into thousands of pieces. She stood frozen in the corridor, his words echoing through the ruins of her heart. Lord Ludovic, she breathed, her voice almost a despairing whisper. He said he would give it serious consideration. His voice was like a smooth, dangerous melody, winding around Sylvia's heart. Her name, Sweet Sylvia, fell for his lips like a promise. She gazed up at this unbelievably handsome man, her heart fluttering, and softly called his name, Lord Ludovic. That moment, surrounded by a wave of crimson roses, became a perfect picture of budding love. But in the shadows of the corridor, another pair of eyes watched it all, and her world began to spin. Sarah's breath caught, and an icy knot formed in her stomach. Why? Why was she so shocked? Was this not exactly what she wanted? Was she not the one who had desperately longed for a divorce? She stumbled away, a desolate figure in the grand and empty hall, her breaths turning into broken sighs. She should be happy, she told herself, trying to crush the pain in her chest. This was her chance to finally become a nun, her chance to find peace in the quiet corridors of a convent, just as she had always planned. After all, this was only natural. Anyone would prefer her younger sister Sylvia. A girl without ugly scars, a flawless doll, was obviously the better choice. Then why did her heart feel as if it were being torn apart? A rapid knock cut through the silence of her room, jolting her out of her spiraling thoughts. Her hand flew to her chest. When the door opened, it was Ludovic. He called her name. Sarah. His voice was tense, carrying an emotion she could not identify. You were not in your room, he said, those stunning blue eyes clouded with worry. I was concerned. I'm sorry. I quickly calmed down, forcing myself to put on a composed expression. She said she had felt a little dizzy earlier, which was a lie, so she had returned to her room. That will not do, he insisted, his gaze intense. You should let a doctor examine you. His concern was almost tangible, a warmth that nearly melted her resolve. No, I'm fine now, she insisted, her voice softer than she expected. Please do not worry about me. He still looked unconvinced. His brow was tightly furrowed, but in her haste to change the subject, She blurted out the first question that came to mind. More importantly, did you talk with Sylvia? He gave a brief nod. He adjusted his cravat, his expression unreadable. It seemed she did not have anything particularly important to discuss. He said indifferently, "She left a short while ago." Sarah's thoughts were in chaos. Ah, I see. Her thoughts tangled into a mess. If she was thinking about her own future, she should confirm his true intentions now and press him for the truth. But the selfish, frightened part of her heart did not want to admit it. She did not want to separate from Lord Ludovic. And so, as she looked at his handsome face, she found herself completely unable to speak. "It's nothing," she finally managed to whisper. "Are you sure?" His voice was gentle, yet probing. "Yes, truly." A slow, gentle smile spread across his face, making her heart skip a beat. Then, he said softly, moving closer to her, "If anything is troubling you, please tell me right away. I want to help you." His sincerity was difficult to guard against, and those sapphire eyes gazed at her like a promise of protection. "Thank you," she said softly, and a genuine, bright smile finally pierced through her despair. The next day, the sun shone brilliantly, but a storm was brewing. Sylvia came, wearing a daring red dress, her smile as bright and false as a glass flower. She greeted her cheerfully. Sarah met her in the sitting room, the dark gown she wore forming a sharp contrast with her sister's. "Lord Ludovic is away on business today," she informed her younger sister coldly. "He will not be back for quite some time." Sylvia's smile did not waver. "That's all right," she said lightly. "Actually, I came today to apologize to you, Sister Sarah." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Well, you see, Lord Ludovic promised me something." A malicious, triumphant light flashed in Sylvia's eyes as she delivered the final blow. "In 1 week, he will take me as his wife." Her words hung in the air, sharp and cruel. "Of course, that means you will be divorced." Sarah's world collapsed. So it was true. All of this had been for that. "I'm sorry, sister," Sylvia said with a false smile, her voice dripping with fake pity. "What a shame." Sarah froze where she stood, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, wrinkling the fabric of her skirt as she struggled to keep herself from falling. 1 week later, the morning sunlight poured in through the window, but it brought not a trace of warmth. Sarah woke and let out a heavy sigh, the pressure of the past week nearly crushing her spirit. "Good morning." A gentle voice sounded beside her. Her eyes flew open. Lord Ludovic. He was sitting by her bed, his face propped in one hand, wearing a mild, sleepy smile, looking as though he had been watching over her for hours. "You're back. I have to leave again soon," he admitted, his smile unchanged. "But I came back at dawn just to see you." His words were like sweet poison, throwing her already shattered heart into even greater confusion. He asked what she planned to do today. She vaguely said something about greetings and etiquette, but her mind had already drifted far away. "I see," he said, but her thoughts were screaming. Today was the day he was supposed to take Sylvia as his wife. She gazed at him, her expression gradually stiffening. "But he still hasn't mentioned divorce to me." He must have seen the wavering in her eyes. "More importantly, Sarah, you don't look well." He leaned closer, his body trapping her against the headboard, and lifted his hand to cup her cheek with unbelievable tenderness. "Is something troubling you?" She drew in a sharp breath, her breathing catching in her throat. His thumb gently stroked her skin, his gaze growing deeper. "I want to hear you tell me now." He paused, his eyes softening slightly. "But the carriage is waiting for me. Please tell me when I return." She could only nod, as if her voice had been lost. "And please take care. Have a safe journey." She barely managed to say it. He gazed at her for another moment, as if the two of them had exchanged a silent conversation, and then he finally left. The sky wept above the Moradelli estate, rain falling like a gray curtain. Inside, Sylvia paced back and forth with excited anticipation. "Lord Ludovic, we've been waiting for you," she said sweetly as a figure in a black cloak entered the hall. "Please come in." Ludovic lowered his hood, his sharp blue eyes sweeping the room with a cold, calculating light. "Forgive the intrusion," he said in a flat tone. He walked beside her through the long, echoing corridor, the silence between them heavy and ominous. Sylvia chattered on, completely unaware of the storm gathering in his expression. He glanced at her, his gaze landing on the brilliant blue butterfly earrings swaying from her earlobes. His face turned to stone. "Those earrings." His voice was dangerously low. "They're the pair I gave Sarah before, aren't they?" Sylvia froze. "Huh, right here," he said, his fingers brushing over the delicate jewelry. "Sarah's name is engraved on them in foreign script." His gaze pinned her in place like a blade of ice. Why are you wearing them? The air crackled with menace. That was his. Her mind raced, beads of sweat seeping from her forehead. Ah, I remember now. She forced out a desperate smile. She gave them to me, she said. She said they weren't to her taste. Please forgive my sister's poor taste, she added, trying to seem charming. The corner of Ludovic's lips curved into a smile without the slightest warmth. I see. That explains it. He reached out and lightly patted her head. The gesture should have seemed affectionate, but it felt like a death sentence. Suddenly, the door burst open with a crash, and a group of vicious-looking thugs rushed in. Sylvia screamed and staggered back in terror. What is the meaning of this? Where are the servants? Ludovic did not even blink. Everyone in this estate is already acting under my orders. He looked down at her trembling, cowering form, his eyes like ice. No one will come to help you. Just then, her parents were dragged into the room, their hands bound and their mouths gagged, their faces deathly pale. They were full of fear. Father! Sylvia screamed and rushed toward them, only to be stopped by the thugs. All of you will be taken into custody, Ludovic announced, his voice echoing through the empty hall, and then transferred to a labor facility in a foreign country. Are you insane? Her father roared. You cannot send nobles to a facility for commoners. That will not be an issue, Ludovic replied, his tone so cold it was almost casual. Your noble titles have already been stripped. From today onward, all assets of the Moradelli family, including this estate, have officially been transferred under my name, Hamid. He took a document from his coat. This is the official paperwork. The council's seal, her father gasped, his eyes bulging. I don't know what you're talking about. Ludovic's revenge had been brewing for years. He spoke of a scandal from 10 years earlier, when an appraiser had exposed forged royal treasures and brought ruin upon several noble families. That appraiser had been hailed as a hero. However, Ludovic explained that a royal friend had once shown him one of the counterfeits, an unbelievably beautiful gemstone, and it had planted a seed of doubt in his heart. The investigation revealed the truth. The appraiser had used magic to deceive everyone, a simple but effective scheme. By the time the truth was uncovered, the framed nobles had been exonerated, but the appraiser had long since vanished. Of course, her father had thought they had escaped unscathed, that no one could prove their involvement. So, Ludovic lowered his voice, Tinnist, I submitted this case to the council again. This time, I had the assistance of the Valevko Empire Intelligence Corps. The name struck the old man like a physical blow. WH what? Valevko's Intelligence Corps? That was the most feared and merciless force in the entire world, an organization that would use any means for victory and valued secrecy above all else. They would never cooperate with anyone. Impossible. Ludovic sneered. True, they did not agree at first, but they owed me a favor. He had once rescued the daughter of their deputy commander from a kidnapping, so they agreed to his request. Absurd, her father stammered. Thanks to their expertise, the appraiser was soon found and captured, and in the face of overwhelming evidence, he confessed to everything, including your involvement. Your role was to give him access to those jewels, and your payment was the land of the nobles you helped destroy. As for your greatest amusement, he said with a cold laugh, it was watching them walk toward ruin. Forging royal tributes is regarded as treason. If you still value your life, I suggest you stop making these pathetic excuses. Why? Her father screamed, his face purple with rage. Why would you go to such lengths to expose us? The risk was too great. Ludovic's expression turned utterly cold. The reason is simple. Because of what you did to Sarah. You lied to her in your reports, deceived me, and stole her belongings. Even after I paid off her debts for her, you continued to exploit her. For 6 whole years, he said, his voice trembling with suppressed rage, I kept sending Sarah letters and gifts. I was told she received all of them, but she never received even one. You thought you could take everything from her and walk away unscathed. What a brainless fool, her father retorted, his eyes gleaming with malice. Accusing us on the basis of a personal grudge alone? You have no proof. No matter how high a title you obtain, commoner blood still runs through your veins. Your low-born nature will never change. Ludovic's eyes narrowed dangerously. I think a slow and terrible smile spread across his lips. We should hear what Oswald has to say about that. He held out a hand towards Sylvia, who was trembling and crying. Her eyes widened with absolute, soul-tearing terror. A storm raged outside the grand Moradelli estate, lightning tearing across the sky, while judgment descended within its walls. Sylvia took part in her parents' conspiracy, his voice declared, and therefore she is guilty as well. Through the bars of the door, she saw the scene, her parents bound, and the handsome yet terrifying Ludovic standing over them like an executioner. Her heart pounded violently against her ribs. She knew nothing, she insisted. Her voice shook, panic seizing her as she hurriedly pointed to the delicate butterfly earrings dangling from her earlobes. The earrings. They were only a gift, she stammered, her trembling hands holding up the equally trembling evidence. But Ludovic's gaze was heavy. He warned that if she insisted on continuing with such an obvious lie, his voice dangerously low, she would be sent to the same facility as her parents. Can you accept that? He asked, his sharp blue eyes gleaming with a cold, ruthless light that foretold a fate worse than death. He said it was a harsh place, a prison for criminals, filled with the vilest men imaginable. The leering faces of those men surfaced in her mind, making her gasp in terror. However, a ray of hope appeared in the darkness. If she was willing to testify against her own parents, he coaxed softly, leaning closer. Perhaps he could show her a little leniency. His offer hung in the air like tempting poison. What did she say? It was not a bad condition, was it? A devastatingly charming smile bloomed on his face, in stark contrast to the murderous aura from moments before. She did not hesitate for even a second. She would testify. Her parents stared at her in disbelief, their faces twisted with shock as they watched their own daughter betray them. Just as he had expected, she clutched his cloak like a drowning person and told him everything, her words pouring out in a desperate flood. Every gift Lord Ludovic had sent had been taken by them, sometimes even sold, and not a single item had ever reached her sister's hands. She was terribly sorry for staying silent all this time, she cried, but she had been strictly ordered not to speak. Behind her, her parents' rage erupted. You traitor! How dare you? Ludovic merely glanced down at the pathetic farce. Oh, is it not only natural for parents to sacrifice themselves for their child's happiness? Sylvia continued to stare wide-eyed and desperately beg for mercy, but Ludovic's patience had run out. He pinched the bridge of his nose, his expression filled with utter disgust. Even listening to this is embarrassing. With cold decisiveness, he gave the order. Take him away now. The guard stepped forward, and the room instantly filled with screams. Let me go, her mother screamed, while her father fixed Sylvia with a hateful glare. Do you think you can escape all this? You won't escape the consequences. Ludovic's voice was calm, but chilling. Enjoy wagging your tongue while you still can, he said, because you'll be squeezed dry until your final breath. Her father's face turned white with fear, and the door slammed shut, sealing his fate. Sylvia immediately turned to Ludovic, her face wearing a mask of hopeful devotion. Lord Ludovic, as you promised, please show mercy. He smiled, and behind him it seemed as though a bed of thorny roses had bloomed. Of course, he replied smoothly. He thanked her for her testimony, but his smile was a lie. You are still a minor, he said, his voice without a trace of warmth. So an orphanage will be the most suitable place for you. He bent down, his handsome face a mask of cold indifference, as though those thorns were closing in around her. The word struck her face like a slap. She could never endure such a miserable life. She begged him, pleaded with him to reconsider and arrange a more appropriate place for her. His expression did not waver. This decision has already been made, he said, his eyes as cold as shards of ice. Regardless of what you think, her world collapsed. Someone will come to take you away tomorrow, he continued, turning his back to her as though she were nothing. Remember to pack your things. He left her kneeling on the floor, broken and alone. A fury rose in her chest and lodged in her throat. You bastard, she gritted out inwardly. She had testified for that lowly commoner, and this was the reward she received, betrayal. He stopped at the doorway and looked back at her, his eyes full of pure contempt. You are ugly, right to the very end. Ugly? Me? The insult struck a nerve, and a bitter laugh escaped her lips. Huh, that defiled second-hand woman he married was far uglier than she was. Only a depraved nature could be aroused by such a disgusting body. It was sickening beyond words. In the next instant, he suddenly reached out, grabbed her hair, and cruelly yanked her head back. A scream of pain was torn from her lips. Killing intent burned in his eyes, and the charming mask vanished completely. "Keep shouting," he hissed, "and I will crush your throat." Her eyes widened with absolute terror as he leaned closer, his cold breath brushing against her skin. "If you insist on being unable to control your mouth, perhaps I should reconsider your fate. I could hand you over to slave traders, or auction off your organs." The corner of his lips twisted into a slow, cruel smile. "You will spend the rest of your life paying for the sin of insulting Sarah." She could only tremble, hot tears of defeat and fear streaming down her cheeks as the last trace of hope died with them. That night, Ludovic returned to his own estate, the storm outside finally over. He pushed open the door to their room, his voice soft. "I'm back." Sarah lifted her head from her book, her beautiful face full of surprise. She looked around, questions in her eyes. "Where is Sylvia?" He only smiled gently. "But I thought you went out today to take Sylvia as your wife," she said, her confusion obvious. "Was that not the purpose of your visit?" He walked toward her, his expression softening into pure, doting affection. "What are you talking about?" "I did go to the Moradelli estate, but only because I had something to ask her." For the entire 6 years since their engagement, he had regularly sent her money and letters. "But you seem to know nothing about it," he explained. "So I went to investigate." Sarah's green eyes widened in shock. "Unfortunately," he continued, "it turned out that your parents kept everything for themselves. Not a single thing reached your hands. Sylvia told me herself." Sarah was stunned. What shameful behavior. She lowered her head, her voice filled with shame. "I sincerely apologize to you." He reached out, his touch gentle. "You have nothing to apologize for." He tilted his head slightly and asked with curiosity, "Why did you believe I intended to marry Sylvia?" Sarah blushed, unable to meet his eyes. "Did you overhear our conversation?" She lowered her head in embarrassment. "I'm sorry. I did not mean to eavesdrop." He laughed softly. "That was my fault. I wanted to confirm the truth about the gifts, so I said some sweet words to her. I suppose that must have caused the misunderstanding." His eyes searched hers. "After hearing me speak so frivolously, did you begin to despise me?" She immediately denied it, sincere and heartfelt. "I could never feel anything toward you except gratitude." "Despise you? Such a thought is impossible." Before she could say another word, he pulled her into his arms and held her tightly against his chest. Her eyes widened in surprise as she watched him bury his face in her hair. "Thank goodness," he whispered, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Because if I lost you, I would not be able to go on living." Her heart skipped a beat, and warmth spread across her cheeks at his confession. He held her tightly, and in the quiet room, a silent moment flowed between them. "That is too exaggerated," she whispered against his chest. He drew back slightly, only to look into her eyes, his own gaze burning with sincerity. "Every word I said is true." He took a breath, his voice lowering into a deep, fervent murmur. "And you? When you misunderstood me, when you thought about leaving me, did you hesitate even a little?" She was caught off guard, her thoughts racing beneath his searching gaze. "You cannot answer?" he asked gently, while she remained silent. "It is all right," he said, his shoulders drooping slightly. "Even if my feelings are one-sided right now, they are not one-sided." She blurted out, her cheeks burning. He lifted his head, his eyes widening in surprise. "I do not even know how to understand these feelings," she confessed, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. "I have never felt this way before. But when I think of being separated from Lord Ludovic, A tear slid down her cheek, and she looked at him with her whole heart in her eyes. "Sarah," he called softly, his voice full of wonder. Then he bent down and kissed her lips. The kiss was gentle and hesitant, yet it sent an electric current through her entire body. His hand cupped her jaw, deepening the kiss, and he murmured against her lips, "Open your mouth a little more." When they finally parted, she was breathless. Her cheeks dyed a beautiful rose color. His own cheeks were faintly flushed as well, and he gazed at her with overflowing love. "I love you," he confessed, his voice hoarse. "Only you. Always only you." Then he kissed her again, all restraint disappearing. He gathered her into his arms and lifted her with ease, carrying her toward the bed. She drew in a startled breath. "Wait." He gently laid her on the soft mattress, his eyes dark with passion. "I'm not ready to go further yet," she whispered, her heart still unprepared. He immediately pulled back, his face full of worry and embarrassment. I'm sorry. I got carried away and must have frightened you." "No, I'm not afraid." She comforted him, pressing a hand to her chest. It's just that my heart is beating so fast here, it feels as though it might burst. Please go slowly. A gentle, sentimental smile spread across his face. Sarah, then I will not go all the way, but may I hold you a little longer? She nodded shyly, his gentleness melting her heart. And so they lay down together, wrapped in a pure yet loving embrace, surrounded by the lingering fragrance of flowers. Meanwhile, in another room, Hugo was staring intently at a magical tool. I finally have proof, he declared, conviction burning in his eyes. Ludovic Valencia is a monster through and through. Sarah, who was with him, gasped in shock. The scene flashed back to Hugo rushing through the gates of the ruined Moradelli estate. This is the downfall of the Moradelli family that my divination foretold. I hurried here, and just as I feared, everything had fallen into ruin. Looking at the terrible scene before him, he wondered what on earth happened here. Then he saw her figure, sitting collapsed and alone on the grand staircase. Sylvia. She turned her head, her face pale and streaked with tears, her eyes hollow with despair. He ruined us, she whispered, her voice broken. That man ruined everything. Hugo could only stare in horror. Back in the present, he told Sarah this terrible story. Lord Ludovic had taken all the Moradelli family's land. Her parents had been stripped of their titles and sent to a labor facility, and Sylvia had been forcibly taken to an orphanage as well. The news shocked Sarah to the core, but she could not make herself believe it. There had to be some kind of misunderstanding. She insisted, saying that if Lord Ludovic had not repaid our debts for us back when we became engaged, we would have gone bankrupt long ago. Hugo's expression was grave as he raised a tarot card. No, even that debt was something he orchestrated himself. Sarah went cold all over. What? This is a magical spell that can reveal the past, he explained. Before, he had only seen scattered fragments, but now he had pieced everything together. A purple magic circle lit up around the card. I will show you Ludovic Valencia from 6 years ago, before your engagement. Listen carefully. The image spun and gradually became clear, and Sarah drew in a sharp breath. I know this place. Father brought me here before. This is the casino. And over there, that's Ludovic. He looks so young. The other man is the casino owner. Do they know each other? A voice came from the illusion. The Moradelli family is already on the verge of collapse, the casino owner said to the young and even colder Ludovic. If you intend to force her father to agree to the engagement now, this is the perfect time. I will repay their debts for them. In exchange, Lady Sarah will marry me. That way, the performance will be flawless. After all, most of their debts were forced on them by you. The young Ludovic said nothing. He only took a drag from his cigarette. His handsome face was like an unreadable mask. The truth struck Sarah hard, shattering the happiness she had only just obtained. Her eyes widened, full of disbelief and fear. No, Lord Ludovic,